Good evening and welcome to the Bellevue City Council meeting for Monday, June 12th, 2017. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please rise. And assisting us with the Pledge of Allegiance is Eagle Scout leader Aaron Clark, Troop 464. And please remain standing for the invocation by Pastor David Leidick, Midlands Bible Baptist Church, 2407 Chandler Road East.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Thank you again, Mayor, for the privilege. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for the liberty we enjoy even here tonight. Lord, to assemble together as a free people. And Lord, we know at this very moment there are people standing watch so that we might have the freedom we enjoy. Lord, we pray your protection upon them, your guidance, and your help. And Lord, certainly for the decisions and actions of here tonight, you've told us in your word that if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. And so, Father, we come before you tonight asking you to impart that, for any decisions to be made, Lord, that you'd give discernment to make the right decision. And Lord, that a premium and a priority would be put on doing that which is right. And Lord, you'd empower and help them in that determination, I pray. So put your blessing upon all that's said and done here tonight. And through it all, Lord, may you get all the praise, honor, and glory. And we'll thank you for it in Jesus' precious name. Amen. Amen. Bless you.
Thank you, Pastor Leidick. Thank you to Aaron Clark. Item number 2, Sabrina, please call roll.
Mr. Hanson.
Here.
Mr. Cook.
Here.
Mr. Shannon.
Here.
Mr. Preister.
Here.
Mr. Burns.
Here.
Mr. Modry.
Here.
Thank you. Item 2A, this meeting will be conducted according to the Open Meetings Act, posting the entry to the council chambers. Item 3.
Item 3 is the approval of the agenda, the consent agenda, minutes, and advisory committee reports. Sub-item A is the approval of the minutes, approval of the agenda, please.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item B is the approval of the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion unless a City Council member or a citizen so requests, in which event the item will be removed from consent status and placed in its normal sequence on the agenda. Item 1 is the approval of minutes of the May 22, 2017 meeting of the City Council. Item 2, acknowledge the receipt of minutes of the May 25, 2017 meeting of the Planning Commission. And item 3, approval of claims. Council members, are there any of these items you'd have removed from consent status?
Mr. Burns.
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Shannon. Discussions or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 5, special presentations. 5A, presenting Aaron Clark, Boy Scout Troop 464, a certificate of recognition for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. And we'll come down there, Aaron. Anybody else would like to join?
Thomas is going to join.
Aaron Clark, on behalf of the City of Bellevue, we want to congratulate you on the great achievement of the rank of Eagle Scout in the Boy Scouts of America, February 1st, 2017. Congratulations.
I'd really just like to take this moment to kind of talk about Aaron and what he really did and what the ranking of Eagle Scout actually is. It's the highest ranking you can get in the Boy Scouts. Only about 4% of Boy Scouts actually get awarded this ranking. And it's a really huge accomplishment, Aaron, and you should really be proud of yourself. Aaron showed real leadership. He took on an Eagle Scout project, which is a requirement to earn the rank, and his project was helping to restore the Bellevue West's varsity baseball field. So he showed true leadership in helping paint the dugouts, the foul posts, and also replacing the back spot netting. And he also helped with landscaping. Again, on February 1st, he passed the board review. And just, I know we clapped twice, but let's clap again, because I just think it's a really huge accomplishment, and Aaron should be really proud.
Item number 6, liquor license.
Sub-item A is R&J Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Jammers Pub, application for a special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits during a beer garden at 1505 Galvin Road South on July 15, 2017, from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Rick Corbin, the owner of Jammers Pub on 1505 Galvin Road.
Are there any questions from the council? I'll go ahead and open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, please do so at this time. Is there anyone else? See none, we'll close the public hearing. What are the wishes of the council? Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission for R&J Enterprises, Inc., doing business as Jammers Pub, their application for a special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits during the beer garden at 1505 Galvin Road South on July 15th, 2017, from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. Discussion or questions? Mr. Modry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be abstaining from this item for religious and personal reasons.
Are there any other questions or discussion? Mr. Shannon.
Yeah, this is an annual event, and this is a long-standing business in Bellevue that's done good by our community, and we just want to thank you for your continued support of the community.
Thank you very much.
See no other questions? Or please vote.
Five yes votes, one abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
None items on item 7, 8, and 9. Item 10, public hearing on matters other than ordinances.
Sub-item A is the public hearing on the event license application of the Bellevue Economic Enhancement Foundation in partnership with the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce for the Riverfest Red, White, and Q 2017 Community Festival, to be held in Hayworth Park and American Heroes Park on July 21, 2017, from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m., and July 22, 2017, from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. I'll go ahead and read the next two items that are associated with this so the hearing can be addressing all of them. Sub-item 1 is the Bellevue Economic Enhancement Foundation application for a special designated liquor license to sell beer, wine, and distilled spirits during the Riverfest Red, White, and Q 2017 Community Festival at Hayworth Park on July 21, 2017, from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m., and July 22, 2017, from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Sub-item 2, Bellevue Economic Enhancement Foundation, in partnership with the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, request for permission to have a fireworks display in Hayworth Park on July 22, 2017, in conjunction with the Riverfest Red, White, and Q 2017 Community Festival.
I will now open for public hearing. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to say a few words about the Riverfest?
We're looking forward to another great year. I'll throw out there, we have 2 tribute bands coming this year. So we'll have a Fleetwood Mac and Police, which are 2 big tribute bands out of Kansas City, and then Echophonic out of Omaha. So we got some great bands lined up. Great car show. You'll see, I think he's 300 to 400 cars every year. Great lineup with vendors and all the participants. Good community festival coming up. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. We look forward to it as well. I'll go ahead and open public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? We have item 10A, 1 and 2 included in the public hearing. See none, we'll close the public hearing. Wishes of the council? Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I will first make the motion that we approve the event license application of the Bellevue Economic Enhancement Foundation in partnership with the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce for the Riverfest Red, White, and Q 2017 Community Festival to be held at Hayworth and American Heroes Parks on July 21st, 2017 from 4 p.m. to 1 a.m. and July 22nd, 2017 from 6 a.m. to 1 a.m. Second.
I heard the second, Mr. Modry, second by Mr. Modry. Questions or discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. I will now make a motion to recommend to the Nebraska Liquor Control Commission that we approve a request for a special designated liquor license for the Riverfest Red, White, and Q on the dates that I just mentioned during those times.
Second.
Second by Mr. Burns. Discussion or questions? See none. Mr. Modry.
Yep. I again will be abstaining from this item.
Okay. Any other? Mr. Cook.
Just real quick for clarification, I think the liquor license is a little bit different than the event license times. I don't know if we need to spell out the times for the liquor license
Okay.
each
from
day.
4 p.m. instead of 1 to 2 a.m. and July 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 a.m. Thank you.
Did you get that, Sabrina? Thank you. Please vote.
5 yes votes, 1 abstention.
Thank you. Good luck and thank you for everything you do, Mr. Risto, for the community. Thank you.
I got number 2.
Oh, number 2. We have a motion for number 2. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve the request from the Bellevue Economic Enhancement Foundation in partnership with the Bellevue Chamber of Commerce, the request for permission to have a fireworks display in Hayworth Park on July 22nd, 2017 in conjunction with the Riverfest Red, White, and Q 2017 Community Festival.
Second by Mr. Shannon. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item B is a show cause hearing on the proposed condemnation of the structures located at 12709 South 28th Avenue. Sub-item 1 below that is resolution number 2017-11, condemning the structures located at 12709 South 28th Avenue and ordering them to be torn down and debris removed by July 14, 2017.
Mr. Shannon.
Being an officer of the company that owns the property, I'm going to recuse myself and depart the chambers while this item's debated.
Thank you. I'll now open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on these items, please do so at this time. Mr. Preister.
Mayor, prior to people testifying, I think it would be practical and useful to understand what it is we are dealing with and what we're not dealing with. And I believe all that we have on the agenda tonight is the condition of the property. We don't have TIF, we don't have anything other than the condition of the property.
Correct.
And I think it would be instructive if we, in our discussions, stuck to the topic of what the condition of the property is. So with that, I know we've got lots of information, and there's been lots of things on social media, and they've said some things that are true, they've said some things that are not true. There's lots of rumors. So for tonight, hopefully we can work through it step by step, but that we can keep to the actual condition of the property.
So I wondered if we should have Mike Christensen do his presentation first, if that's okay?
That would
Thank
make
you.
sense. Thank you.
Invite Mike down if you would, please.
There you go. Yeah. Just start with a small presentation of the structure as it sits in present day. Did you start this, Phil? It's going now. I thought it went. This is how the property presents itself at this time. Basically, it's not capable of being used as a car wash for its intended use. Here in the past, there was a permit that was taken out for a retaining wall that's to serve as a vehicular guardrail as well as a pedestrian guardrail. There have been no requests for any inspections on this wall up to this date. There's good possibility that it won't pass as a vehicular guardrail or a pedestrian guardrail. Also, there may be some issues with water that's been diverted out onto 28th Street. As you can see, it's still in dire need of some repair. There's also some rubble that is on the property. Some of it may be construction materials related to the construction of the retaining wall. There's a lot of pedestals where vacuums, et cetera, were removed from the past, debris on the property. There's no electrical service at this time to the structure itself, and the bays in general have been stripped of all the operable mechanisms that would serve as a car wash. There's no coin mechanisms, there's no drops for car wash wands, etc. The pits are just with stagnant water, approximately 3 to 4 foot deep at this present time. Again, just miscellaneous material stored on the property at this time, and that's the condition at present day. Yeah, for that. Basically, how we get to this point is I've met with the owner in the past, and there was an understanding that he was going to remodel the property, but he never came forth with any construction plans or attempted to pull any permits to remodel or recondition the property. The City of Bellevue has ordinances in place that address several different types of structures throughout the Bellevue area. And under 841, there's 10 bullets there that if you fall under any one of those categories, you fall into what's considered a nuisance. Number 10 would apply to this structure, which says it's in violation of any other ordinance within the City of Bellevue. Ordinance 846 talks about structures that have depreciated in value to a point of 50% of its previously assessed value. This property has gone from approximately 63,900 plus for 12 years straight down to 12,000 plus. So it fits the category of a property that has depreciated for any cause to an extent of over 50%. It's actually over 75%. With that being said, it fits under the category of 42 of the city ordinance, which says that any property that's considered a public nuisance should be repaired or vacated or demolished. So at this point, I've sent out a certified letter, May 1st, had a time frame for response. I got no response from the owner. So I'm bringing this before you to hope we can come to a resolution to get this property back on track.
Are there any questions for Mike? Mr. Modry?
You said it's not capable of being used as a car wash. What do you base that judgment on?
None of the components that would serve as a car wash, unless you were going to bring your own water and bucket and wash your car in there. There's no components present at this time to serve as a car wash. It's just a structure.
Just the structure right now, but
Correct.
it could be capable of being a car wash if equipment were put in.
Correct.
Okay. You talked about the appraised value, or the value of the property was $63,000, went down to that $12,000 or whatever it is in 2015, and has remained there since 2015.
16 and 17.
Or
it's been
16,
12,000.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
yes.
Correct.
Property was bought in end of July of 2015. So the 16 evaluation was then, I understand, based on the purchase price.
Well, the county assessor is the one that dropped it, and,
Right.
And that may have something to do with its present condition, and that's up to the assessor, but its previous value prior to that was $63,000 plus
Yep.
for 12 years.
Yeah, I don't-
It-
A memo
The
from
ordinance just states for any reason, so it has depreciated over 75%.
It's not depreciated in the last year and a half or 2 years.
Not since 16, correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Cook?
Mike, you referred to 842, you mentioned 3 requirements: to be repaired, demolished, or what was the third one?
Vacated. If it were a safety issue where someone was occupying the structure and you needed to get them out, you need to vacate it.
So the present owner bought it, or the company bought it in July of 2015, and it was at that $63,000 value
Correct.
mark?
Yes, sir.
And you're saying for 2016, 2017, it's now at 12,000? And
12,000 plus, correct.
okay. But we had about a 12-year period where it was around that 63,000?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't know what the owner paid for it. I don't care, but I just
mean, I
looked
can
at
give you the exact years.
valuations here.
From 2004 through 2015, it was at 63,550. For 16 and 17, it's been at 12,918.
If I recall right, that property was operating at the time of purchase. Do you know if it was?
To the best of my recollection, my understanding, it was operable up until that point, and from 2015 on, it has not been.
Okay.
There was a cleanup that also occurred on the property for some contamination to the soils about that time.
Okay. And I don't live too far from there and have frequented that business when it was an open car wash. And it just, and I'm sure we're going to hear an explanation for it, for how the process happened, but, we went from a car wash that I remember being open for business. And it seemed like then it was purchased, and then I believe the owner had an idea of redoing things and big plans, and it just slipped from there. I mean, the condition of it was at times horrible, and right now it's not in good shape. So I guess, I don't know what we're going to hear, and would like to hear from the individual representing the owner, but this is, for the last few years, it is in my ward. I've had people make complaints to me about it. I printed off 5 complaints that I checked when I checked my email today, so it has had a lot of complaint on the property. I would assume then it ends up in your department or code enforcement, and I think the frustration is nothing's occurring, nothing's happened. So I just want to make that comment in general that, you got a property that the value has greatly declined, and nothing's happened to that property. I mean, it was tear everything out and then stop. And it has been in very bad shape, and a lot of people have complained about it over the last couple of years, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, you outlined that you brought this to us because it meets the conditions of code, that one of those conditions obviously being the valuation drop. So it's not unlike other properties. If it meets the standard, then eventually you bring it to the council for action to force the issue, essentially. Either it's cleaned up or something happens. Is that accurate?
Yeah, basically based on the city ordinance and the complaints that have come in, I've exhausted my efforts to try to resolve the issue. So the next step for me is to turn it over, since there's been no repairs or plans or any permits attempted to be pulled to repair the property. The step is to bring it before the city council to see if we can get a resolution as to move forward with either the repair or condemnation of the property.
Okay. So unlike some of the social media comments that the department has it in for Mr. Shannon and that you're being vindictive and that the city is being outlandish, it meets the standards. Permits have not been pulled, you said?
Correct, not for the structure itself. There was a permit for a retaining wall. And again, no permit or no inspections have been requested for that wall. And the wall does not meet current code as it stands.
Okay. And I'm guessing, but the council nor you necessarily want to tear buildings down and take people's businesses away from them. Your intent was to get it cleaned up, to get some action to remedy the problem. Is that accurate?
Correct. That's why, the city of Bellevue has these types of ordinances in place, and we try to resolve them, by repairing the property. If I can't get it resolved that way, I bring it to you folks to try to help make a decision and hear, what reasons why it should not be, or have them show cause as to why it shouldn't be a public nuisance.
And you wouldn't be opposed to having an action plan where something was established in writing about what would be done with the property not in terms of development, that's related, but a separate issue. This is just the condition of the property. So you wouldn't be opposed to having an action plan to getting it put back together, meeting current code?
Absolutely not, as long as all the other departments involved were satisfied with the plan that was brought before them.
Okay, obviously it would have to meet other codes and apply just like any other project would.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Christensen? Mr. Cook?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, is there a current pending complaint as far as just cleaning up the property?
Just over the last few months, I think several different departments have received complaints about the condition of the property and that nothing's being done, which prompted the action on the city ordinance for a property that is.
And I realize code enforcement would probably be the ones to issue it, but do we know if there was the required form issued to the owner to clean up the property that is still out there and active?
Yes, but I'm not going to speak on behalf of code.
Okay.
My thought to that was that there was, and it had to do with the debris and construction materials. And then there was a permit pulled for the retaining wall, which would allow, obviously, construction materials to be placed on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Modry?
Thank you. Is the issue the condition of the structure or the condition of the property and debris perhaps that might be on the property? Or
I think all of the above, the non-functionality of the structure just sitting there with debris on the property, some issues with the retaining wall that it's not going to meet code in its present state. Basically, in the fact that it's fallen down to such a depreciation factor, it's going to need to be brought up to design standards with the planning department also.
has any assessment been done on the structure itself that would show any
The
signs
owner
that
may
it might
have-
be unsound or anything?
The owner may have had something done with the structural, but nothing's been presented to
But you
me.
haven't, or anything? It's it's a pretty serious issue to have the city step in and, you know, override a property owner's rights and possibly tear down a property. And we've done that, but we've done that in cases where the property is definitely a safety hazard and, you know, has structure falling down and mold and all those kinds of things. I don't see any of that in this property. So I'd really hate to get to the point where we infringe upon private property rights and tear somebody's property down, in this case.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Christensen? Thank you. Don't go too far. I think we have a couple others that are wanting to speak as well. We still are open for public hearing.
Mayor Sanders, members of the council, Mr. Sullivan, Larry Foreman, 7171 Mercy Road, on behalf of the property owner. I guess as a point of departure, since we're here on a complaint filed by Mr. Christensen seeking condemnation, which I think, as several of you have noted, is a rather drastic step, I would say, first of all, I think the three sections that he's referenced really don't quite address this problem. This is not a building that's falling down. It is not a building that's going to fall down. It is not something that's made of wood and that's rotting or anything like that. It is a very sound structure. It is on a concrete slab. It is a concrete block building. And while it is not attractive, it is not something that needs to be condemned. And so I think when you look at your statute or your code, for instance, 846, and you look at this thing and it says, okay, any building or structure which is liable to fall or collapse from inherent structural weakness or as a result of fire, decay, or otherwise. I don't know who threw in the word otherwise, but that seems to cover a multitude of sins. And I think, you know, without attacking the thing, but I think you might want to look at having that thing reworded, because I think it's probably unconstitutional the way it's written right now. But if you go on then, and it says, and which the owner refuses to repair, and I think if you look at the history of what's been going on, and I'm going to try to give you a little bit of information on that, I think you're going to find that far from refusing to do anything, Mr. Shannon has been trying to do something for quite a while. So all I'd ask you to do when you're listening to Mr. Christensen, if you've watched the local daily for the last 2 weeks, and I'm not even going to bother to use its name because it's really irritating, and when you realize that Mr. Shannon has been able to merit front page coverage in the World Herald for 2 issues, including something, a 13-year-old judgment that the state can't quite collect, and a rundown car wash, you know, we're getting better coverage than the president and Comey. And so I think it's time to realize, and if you stop to realize too, that on the trial we've got coming up on Wednesday before Judge Wester, the gentleman who was just up here talking before is going to be one of the prime witnesses against Mr. Shannon in that case. So we're not talking about somebody who is totally unbiased as far as the situation that he brings to you. But what I'd like to do would be I want to give you a little bit of a very brief history of this thing, and then I'd like to suggest to you that we work together to see if, instead of having what we have down there now, if we can't create something that's going to be positive for the community, that's going to meet a need that is not being met right now, and be able to move ahead down the road in a positive fashion. First of all, I gave you each a packet before this meeting started. The top sheet is a form from Tim Ederer of the Sarpy County Assessor's Office, and he gives you the basis for the value. The property sold for $50,000 2 years ago. What you don't see in that packet is that after Mr. Shannon bought the property, he had to put $22,000 into the property because it was subject to an EPA Superfund action at the time that he bought it. He ended up putting, I believe, $8,000 into getting the old damaged soil out of there and spent another $14,000 putting good soil in. And so, again, this was a problem that was there. This was the reason that the price was as depressed as it was and that he was able to get it for $50,000. But all of a sudden, he had over $72,000 in it. Then, if you look at your next packet, and it's about a 10-page thing, well, what that has is the redevelopment plan that Mr. Shannon has been trying to move forward on this property for the last, I believe, 15, 16 months. Mr. Sullivan, maybe you can correct me on that.
You're accurate.
But basically, came in, wanted to be able to come in and totally redo this thing, but the biggest hooker, and the reason he hasn't been able to do anything yet, is because when he went to his bank, and I'm told Pinnacle Bank is ready to finance this thing, but Pinnacle said, we don't want to bite this off unless we can get TIF financing, because he's going to have to spend $122,000 to bring this thing up to where it can be a modern car wash. For instance, when it was being used before, it had a 3/4 inch line, water line, which is probably the same thing that we all have in our homes. You need a 2-inch line, which is very expensive, to be able to adequately serve this kind of a car wash. So he was looking at $62,000 in electrical expense, $40,000 for a plumber, and $20,000 because they have to separate. They can't have the stuff coming out of here with the oil and the soap and stuff like that and damaging your water supply, so he has to have $20,000 for a separator. He wants to do it. Pinnacle wants to make the loan, but they've said we need to try to have the TIF financing available to the tune of about $62,000. Now, I would suggest to you that TIF isn't going to do anything to harm anybody, because basically the only thing that would go back to help the TIF would be the money that's not being generated now, because you're going to still get the basis, the money coming in on the basis of the current value, but the enhanced value would be available to help with the TIF financing. So I think if you look at this thing, there is not a facility like that serving this part of the community, and we think it would serve that need. We think it would be a catalyst for positive development with other property in the area, and don't think there's any downside to the TIF thing. My understanding now is that when it was approached last year, I believe there were two schools of thought, and I believe Mr. Cook wanted to see the entire Capehart Business District covered, and we have no problem with that. I think the planning director wanted to simply go with the property owned by Mr. Shannon. We have no problem with that. The only downside, I think, for the community is that if you would go with the entire Capehart business section, I'm understanding there is a limit on how much property you can have that's tied up with TIF financing that's declared blighted and substandard. So to the extent that you would use a lot of your allocation to cover the entire Capehart district, you may not be able to have some of it available down the road to do other, properties that might be needed. But, he wants to be a good neighbor. He's done other projects in the community. I think you're aware of them. And he's not trying to create a problem here. He understands that it is not attractive. It's not what he wants it to be. But the thing has been kind of pigeonholed, and it's not been able to advance from Mr. Shuchuk's desk. And so we need to maybe have him prompted to give that to you so you can take a look at it and see if it's the kind of thing you can support. But like I said, we think it's a positive deal. It's going to be a benefit to him. It does him no good to have all that money tied up sitting there in a property that doesn't generate anything. It doesn't do anything for the community. And so we're asking you to to see if we can't have a partnership and move ahead on this thing in a positive manner.
Mr. Sullivan.
I have perhaps comments and/or questions with respect to your testimony, and that is, when you mentioned he's been trying to work on this for 15 or 16 months, it's been 15 or 16 months since he has worked on it. We had an application for it first to be blighted and substandard. That application was denied March 14th of 2016. Looking at that application, from talking to the planning department and talking to, and reviewing the statute myself, it would be very difficult in good faith for the city to declare that blighted and substandard under the conditions that are necessary. So that's where we're sitting at on that deal. Despite the fact of whether it would be good for the community, no reapplication has been made in the last 15 months with a different plan that would support a blighted and substandard. So from that standpoint, we have not had anything in 15 months on that at all.
And my understanding, Mr. Sullivan, was that after that application had been made, it was never forwarded to anybody else. If the requirement is that he reapply, he can do that in a heartbeat.
Well, it was forwarded to the city council, and the city council voted that application down.
Okay.
So the only other opportunity then is live without getting TIF approval or reapplying, and we've had no application in 15 months.
Okay.
One other thing I do want to clarify with respect to, I don't know if it's clarification so much as it is a objection to the idea of saying that Mr. Christensen is biased. I've watched this process, and we've done this several times with several different properties, and he's handled it no differently than what he has handled on any other parcel. We have made a number of decisions as a council to either to proceed with condemnation, which probably happens the vast majority of the time, and a few exceptions have been made in which they put a timeline together with conditions in which they would then apply those conditions and see if those conditions would, if they'd move forward and do something. Of those that they have made that exception, I'm not aware of one that ever did complete one, but the city did give those opportunities to them. But to say that Mr. Christensen is biased, I have seen nothing in his work that would indicate to me that he did anything other than what he would have done with any other property in the city.
Well, we'll be getting into that in more detail Wednesday before Judge Wester.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Foreman, just
Yes,
a
sir.
couple quick comments.
Yes, sir.
I just want to clarify something. I never encouraged, supported, or requested, that area to be blighted. That was not a discussion from me. So I guess my frustration here, and I'm going to sort of go off what Mr. Sullivan just said, is that back in March of 2016, there was a vote on the TIF request, and it was denied. And we haven't seen anything that I'm aware of since then. And I think, I guess I sit here and say, why hasn't he tried to move something forward? I mean, why haven't we seen anything for, say, 15, 16 months? I don't think he can, nothing's gonna change overnight. We're not just gonna randomly come back at a meeting and say, let's take another look at TIF. I mean, he has an obligation. He's a smart person, has many businesses. He has not, that I'm aware of, he has done nothing for that property for 15 months. And I just don't know why he sat on it and just sat idle on it, on that property.
Well, aside from the money that was spent as far as remediation, because remediation was completed, I believe, in March of 16, which was basically a year after he bought it. And so by then he'd spent the $22,000. By then he had already been shot down as far as the first request. And I think he was trying to figure out if there was some way that he could do it without TIF. But the bankers that he's approached, including Pinnacle, said, no, you have to have that because we have to have the benefit of that money stream coming in.
How is it a benefit to the bank having TIF on this property?
Well, because it's going to allow them to recover, I believe, $62,000 out of the amount that they're spending. So it minimizes the risk that they have.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Preister.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Foreman, in your comments, you stated that the site had contamination and that the EPA required cleanup.
That's correct.
And that they declared it as a Superfund site. Now, a lot of times people confuse the two. They are separate and exclusive. Are you saying that this was a Superfund site?
I'm saying it was contaminated. I'm not sure if I said Superfund.
You did.
I think I probably spoke out of turn because I don't know that to be the case. I do know that there was a major spill, a petroleum spill, I'm led to believe, that needed to be addressed. But as far as Superfund, let me kind of back that out if I could, because that was just a statement that was kind of off the
I wanted to
cuff.
be clear on that because just like what Mr. Cook said, when people testify, they should make sure they're telling the truth and that they're accurate before they speak. So those are two things that are not accurate, and I'm glad the public got that clarification. The other issue is we're not here on a TIF application, so I appreciate that you're bringing the issue up, but it's not related. It's related only tangentially. What we're here about is the condition of the property.
Right.
And what I would like to know is, and what I think the neighbors would like to know is, this property has been sitting there, and it's been way before Mr. Shannon owned this property that it wasn't in the best of condition. So I'm not here laying blame to anybody. I'm here trying to find a resolution to a problem. The problem is, I'm a landowner, I'm a property owner, I've had business property in Bellevue, and I don't let it get dirty. I don't let it get messy. If somebody dumps something on my property, I pick it up, I get rid of it. I don't leave it sit for months at a time, and that's what the neighbors are upset about. That's what the complaints are about. This isn't about whether the structure is solid or not. Permits and inspections has to pull some of those things in when they go out. This is about when is the property going to be cleaned up? When is it going to be presentable to the neighborhood? When are people going to be able to drive home and feel good about the entry to their area? So my question to you is that something, the cleanup, I'm not talking about any of the other stuff, just taking care of it and bringing the cleanup part and what code on the wall and those things have to be done. Are you willing to propose to us or work through and put a plan together to do that?
I think that would be a very good idea, and I'd be happy to encourage the property owner to pursue that, because nobody wants an eyesore down there. I guess the problem is, from what I'm told, stuff gets dumped there various times of day and night, and it becomes a policing nightmare for Pat. Somebody dumps off an old washer or a couple of tires or something like that. It's not like he's trying to make an eyesore, but how often do you, and the police, of course, they can't monitor the doggone thing. But, yeah, I think he needs to commit, and I would certainly encourage him. If he was in the chamber now, we could ask him, but I can assure you I will encourage him to do just that, because I think he needs to show good faith to you if you're going to, allow him to refile for the TIF and to try to pursue this and create something that's good for everyone.
Right, and again, TIF is a separate issue.
Right.
So he needs not necessarily show good faith to the council as much as he needs to show good faith to the community. And I agree. Green Bellevue just is in the process of winding down another annual litter cleanup in the city of Bellevue. Every year we go out and we pick up all kinds of trash, tires, white goods, all that stuff is just routinely dumped. It is sad and unfortunate, but it happens. We as volunteers go out and clean that up. I think somebody on their own property, it's not theirs, they didn't do it, but it is their property. And it's not the police's responsibility, it's the owner's responsibility to take care of their property. So I hear what you're saying in that it's a mess and he didn't create it. I agree completely. but it becomes his, just like Green Bellevue took on the responsibility of cleaning up the city again this year, and we didn't put all that litter out there either. So somebody ends up with it, but to leave it sit and sit and sit, to me, isn't the right thing to do. And I want to do the right thing. I want to see the property get redeveloped. I want to see it a good working site, but I want to see it cleaned up first.
I agree. I will work with him on that goal.
Mr. Hanson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't think any of us here really want to condemn property and tear it down. I really don't believe that. However, I can, when I look at a purchase, and investing in the property, and he invests $50,000 and buys it, it seems like a lot of these costs, you would have figured that out before you bought it. In other words, it sounds like almost like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this. What about my environmental issues? What that? You're looking at $613,000 worth of TIF eligible costs. And that would include the bank and everything else before you would have purchased it, it seems like. So I think if we could work on a timeline, but I would say a strict timeline, because we've already had, I think, a building permit asked on that wall. And I do believe that wall is a dangerous thing. You can get into that. If you look at that wall, it looks like it's just going to fall right into the street. And I also think that was a permit, I think, asked quite a while ago, to do that, and nothing's happened. And I think also on May 17th, I think it was, the letter was written to him with no response about anything about this. So, I'm a little hesitant about, doing that, but at the same time, I'm willing to say it, but I think it needs to be a firm date, when you have to have plans and permits and everything lined up, and then a date by which it's going to be completed. Otherwise, we come right back with the nuisance and the condemnation, is my opinion.
For what it's worth, we do have plans. I just have one set. I didn't get this soon enough to be able to make copies for everybody, but if I could submit this to Sabrina, and perhaps she could share it with you.
Yes. Mr. Moji, did you have a question? Okay. We're going to go ahead and also open to the public. We are public request to be heard, and I'm sure there are some people here that would like to voice their opinions. So if we could do that, Mr. Foreman, I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dave Compton, 113 West 22nd Avenue. Councilman, Mayor, actually, I guess what I want to speak about a little bit is I've watched this case unfold actually over the last couple of years, and I think as council people, what you guys got to keep in mind is, I think just because Mr. Shannon sits on the council, he shouldn't be treated any differently than anybody that's out in our residence, to be honest with you. Like I said, this has went on for 2 years, and if you look at the property out there, and I agree with the last thing Mr. Hanson said, as a property owner, or anybody that's going to invest in a property, I think if you want to get TIF financing or something like that, that ought to be something you should take and check into before you take and buy a property. There's no guarantee on TIF financing in the city of Bellevue, and if you sit there and take a look at it, Bellevue don't just pick little businesses to take and give TIF to. If you look at Fort Crook Road, when Bellevue done that, and many other areas, it's sections of land that you actually take and put in for TIF financing. Not one individual land. And I see no reason at all why that would ever qualify for TIF financing. You look at the property value from what it was when it was bought to where it's been now. You look at the frustration with the city of Bellevue of what's taken place over the last 2 years. Mr. Sullivan said itself. He said it's been 16 months since anything's happened out there. Why, I guess as a council person and being in charge of the city of Bellevue, what I have to look at that point in time is, why is this treated any differently? Because I've watched a lot of places get condemned in the city of Bellevue. And I'm not saying that this building should be condemned, but I think the owner should be prepared to take and clean it up, just like I've heard earlier. But on the flip side of that is, I know that, I think actually, what was it, July 14th or whatever, was the condemned date or whatever, that it had to be cleaned up. And I also agree with John. You know, if you guys are gonna allow this to happen, then for the city of Bellevue's sake, maybe you ought to have the same timeline on that for Mr. Shannon bringing stuff in as what you were gonna condemn it with. I mean, 2 years. I mean, you know, the media's followed it, and take the politics out of it. I mean, politics really don't mean nothing. You're talking about an individual that owns a property in the city of Bellevue. But you know what? Like I said, that individual should not be treated any differently than any citizen that pays taxes in the city of Bellevue. And it's been 16 months since anything has been submitted to the city of Bellevue to take and do anything with that property whatsoever. And, you know, when making your decision tonight and stuff, I just hope you guys keep that in mind. I mean, 16 months is a long time. And TIF financing, you know, the planning commission turned it down, the council turned it down. That shouldn't even be an equation in this at all, because that property was never qualified for TIF financing in the first place. And so, but as council people, like I said, and Mayor, I hope you guys take that in consideration, and this should be treated just like anybody else should be. And it has been an eyesore for a long time, and that's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. My name is Alejandra Larios, and I live on 3104 Linwood Drive, and that's my way home, on my way to work. And I'm really sick and tired of seeing that property, like, always with mess, either with mess or what I have witnessed lately when with my children is cars with very dark windows coming in and out of that place from the back of the car wash, where it's, you know, kind of hard to see what's going on, because as it is pretty dark. I have the opportunity to talk to Mr. Shannon on January 5th and ask him. And I even said, it's like, I'm glad that, you know, that you are the city council, and that maybe you know, now you take more responsibility and do something for your property. Because I explained to him, I live there, I see it every time. I'm one of probably the few, or one of the many, that always calls the code enforcement when I see that it's trash or dump there. I mean, I take pride of my property. I take pride of Bellevue. I've been living here for 14 years, and I have not seen a property so run down as this one on my way home or on my way to work. I mean, it's shameful. I'm not a business person, but I understand money, because I have to do it at my home. And, you know, I'm not gonna say that I agree or disagree with condemning the property, but what I wanna see is something done. If the property was valued at over $60,000 when it was running, and it was not the greatest car wash, but it was a functional car wash, and people were taking care of it. I knew the people that they were taking care of it, taking the money out and sweeping and, you know, doing things around. After that property was sold and basically forgotten, I mean, it's unbelievable to think that it's like probably $50,000 went down in value. I mean, I wish I can say that in my home, right? I don't do anything, and my property taxes are going to go down. To the contrary, they went up. I mean, we need to do something. We need to do something. Like I said, I know that I'm not the only one. You guys know that I am not the only one. People have right to you, like Mr. I'm sorry if I say your name wrong, Feister. You mentioned about the social media. I'm part of the Bellevue 411, and I think it's a great idea having that social media, you know, in place here in Bellevue, because I want to say we take business of, and also we take pride of the things that are happening. And we also voice the things that we don't agree that they're happening in our city. We recommend good businesses. We, we do a lot of stuff, and I commend the person that put all those websites or social media, so we can communicate and make our city better. I just hope that you, see my side. I know that you also are gonna see the business side of it, and for the good of the community, I just want you to give a time limit to this. We have been waiting and waiting and waiting. I mean, like I said, January 5th, that's when I talked to him, and he promised that he was gonna do something, but basically he blamed all of you for not being able to do anything. I mean, it's like, stop the blame. Take responsibility as a owner of the property and keep the neighbors happy. And I promise I will take my 3 cars to his car wash so the property can go up, if it is a car wash. If it is something else, maybe, I don't know, Domino's Pizza, I'll be happy to have a Domino's Pizza there.
Thank you very much. If you could, sign in, please. Thank you for coming out this evening.
Steve Dawes, 413 Coons Memorial Drive. First off, the Bellevue City Code was revised and upgraded a few years ago, and I'm very glad that it was. I just wish when my last roofing contractor did work that it had been inspected, but it wasn't, and it was substandard work, and I paid for it after the fact. Anyway, the whole reason that our codes were upgraded was partially for public safety, and I really feel that this is part of that. After looking at the video, water standing stagnant, everybody understands mosquitoes. Leftover materials from a building project that may have taken place on the building itself, destruction, demolition, whatever. Is there anything in there that's hazardous? I don't know. It's an eyesore for people that are visiting the mini mall. And we have a couple of popular restaurants there that bring people from all over the metro area. It's not just Bellevue. I'd like to see us put our best foot forward. But a poor business decision should not come at the expense of public safety. If his plan is contingent on this financing, I'm dead set against this. I say go ahead and tear it down now. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chuck Frederick, 1511 Madison Street. One of the speakers said want to keep the politics out of this, but unfortunately, this is all about politics too. We've got people who don't want Mr. Shannon on the city council, and they're doing their best to try to do anything they can to make a bad image for him. He's a businessman. He owns a car wash on Mission where he put an automated car wash in. He understands business. And right now, it looks to me like people want to just, I see on social media too about all the stuff back there. Who's putting that stuff back there? Think about that question. Who's doing that and why are they doing that? There's a reason for this, and I think that this is happening. And this is politics, unfortunately. Mr. Shannon has spent a lot of money on this project, and at least some of you are saying now that the building is fine, and maybe we should just look at seeing what Mr. Shannon's going to do and what he can do to clean it up and get this done. It's he spent a lot of money on this already, and he's a pretty smart businessman. He owns a number of car washes among other things, and he's been pretty successful, so I don't know what the answer is, but I do know the answer is the building is okay, and it's unfortunate he can't be here to speak about it himself. So what I would do, I would suggest that what you do is delay it, talk to Mr. Shannon about it. If you had to do it privately, you can't do it at a council meeting, talk to it separately, and then come back and make a decision, because I have his timeline here too that I got, and the timeline I've got is that the city's failed to do a lot of things to get it done in time. He's tried, and it hasn't worked out this way. So I'm not sure whether Mr. Sullivan's right or whether his timeline's right, but there certainly is a problem somewhere along this way that doesn't jive. And I just think that there are people who are using politics in this situation, and I think it's time to stop that. Let Mr. Shannon speak to you individually, delay the vote until you find out what it is. He doesn't want to spend all that money and have it go down the tube. That doesn't make sense. He's a smart enough businessman, and I can't explain why the TIF money, he hasn't gotten it, or how he planned on that, but I think he deserves a right to talk to you people before you make a decision. It's almost like there's never been any situation where somebody has not had the right to come up and speak about a situation where they were going to tear down a building. They've always had the right to do that, but he doesn't have the right today. So something's wrong with that. I think it's time to cool your jets and just think about trying to do the best thing for the city. And I'm sure that he wants to clean it up, get it done as quickly as possible. It's costing him money all the time. He hasn't in operation. So I would just suggest that you delay this and talk to him and then make a decision. Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan.
Mr. Frederick,
Yeah.
you just said that the city had failed to do what it was supposed to do with respect to this property. Could you please be specific as to what they failed to do?
Well, do you have this Capehart car wash timeline? Do you have a copy of that?
I don't have it specifically. I just am asking you, what specific things did the city of Bellevue fail to do with respect to this property?
Okay, well, he bought the property July 28th, 2015. He did the testing wells that he had to do for the fuel spills on September 1st, September 14th. He contracted for retaining wall repair. September 28th, 2015, Bellevue red tagged retaining wall work and requested we apply for a permit even though the wall was below the 4-inch requirement for a permit. He submitted permit request and drawing for retaining wall on September 30th, 15, October 2nd. Permit department demands stamped engineering drawing on retaining wall that did not even qualify for requiring a permit. October 3rd,
Let me interrupt you for a moment.
Yeah.
When you say did not qualify for a permit, is that your opinion or is that an actual fact?
That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Want me to go
Continue.
on?
Yes.
Okay. Then October 3rd, 2015, he hired E&A to put together stamped engineering drawing on the retaining wall. And R&G dug 4 wells and took core samples October 7th, 2015. October 14th, 2015, E&A Consulting issued sealed reports on retaining wall stating that no permit was required. Bellevue refused to get out of the way unless we paid for unnecessary permit anyway. They could not comprehend that you measure the earth being retained. October 23rd.
Again,
that's opinion.
that's opinion.
Yeah,
So
that's all.
none of those things have been adjudicated and there has been no determination of that, correct?
I'm just
So
giving-
far, you have nothing there that has showed that the city of Bellevue has failed in any respect.
Well, if this is right here, then they did fail. I don't know for sure, but this is what I'm saying.
Because they wrote it, that it means it? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, it's almost as much as somebody's saying something up there, and I should believe it all the time. I don't do that. You know that.
I think you've answered enough of my question. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure, I appreciate your time too. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Lisa Swanson. Earlier in the day, I sent emails with photographs to the members of council so you could know what it looks like if you haven't walked on this property and looked at the car wash personally. It's a mess, and it's been a mess for a long time. Like the woman who was here earlier, the lady from Linwood Drive, we are the only people from the actual neighborhood who are here tonight. Like her, we drive past this mess every day. It's embarrassing for Bellevue. Whatever is supposed to be happening hasn't happened. It's time to take some responsibility and hold people responsible for this. I'm not saying tonight what I had originally intended to. A gentleman earlier talked about the standing water that is always on that property when it's not frozen, and that's a health risk. There are children who live right in the neighborhood, and they go up to the corner market for candy and pop like kids everywhere to their closest neighborhood market. They cut through that property, and it's a nasty walk. Behind it, there is evidence of lots of misdeeds that the police department might pay a little bit more attention to, but it's very dark back there. There's no electricity on that property. So there's lots of things that can happen in the dark, and everybody wants to think they live in a nice neighborhood. We can do better than this for Bellevue to attract businesses to that mall, to the Capehart neighborhood. We need to do a better job, and I have long been a person who thinks that you don't have to move to live in a better neighborhood. Thank you for your time. I hope some action can be taken on this in a very timely manner.
Are there others?
Just sign here, okay. Okay, so what I suggest is that...
Excuse me, could you state your name for the
sorry.
record, please?
My name is David Nicholson. Sorry, what I suggest is that you give him something of a warning and then about a month or so to actually do something. If nothing happens, then you can just, I don't know, bring down the hammer of justice and condemn it. But I think you should just give him a bit more time, seeing, I don't know what I was going to say with that. As it is, I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I don't really care about the appearance of it. When you tear something down, it also causes a bunch of, I don't know, the concrete's going to be pretty scarred up because of not only construction equipment and the building was there before, and then there's the spots that were worn down from sunlight, water, all that. And then there's a contrast from that. So that's also going to be unattractive if you tear it down. So yeah, there's the pros and cons of both. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Are there others? Not, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I just wanted to make a final statement. A statement was made that this would be putting someone out of business, and we're not, none of us here, and we can all agree, are here to put anyone out of business. It is a partnership, and we all plan to work together through this process, and there is a process in place, and it has been for the last 2 years. So we're here to work together and hopefully come up with the right solution, so thank you. What are the wishes of the council? Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to just make 2 comments, and I'll make a motion. My goal is that this property gets redeveloped, and someday we see an open for business sign on it. And I think that's probably a lot of the council members feeling on this. And I think part of what's going on here is we have a property, it was just brought up by a couple speakers, that the electricity has been removed. It's very dark. We have apartments, we have many homes, we have base housing. There are kids that are going up to that gas station. And what happens is there's steps that lead from the car wash up to the gas station. They're sitting on there, and they're on that property. And I think that is what creates maybe more debris and stuff that is then dropped off at that property because there's no one home. There's no lights. So I'm going to make a motion. I'll make a motion I want this property to be redeveloped. I want to move forward on it, and I'm going to give some tight timelines here. I want to make a motion that the owner is required to submit detailed plans compliant with all code requirements for review for issuance of permits. These plans must be presented to the city no later than July 19th, 2017, and be accompanied by a definitive timetable for implementation of approved work to completion. Absent plans for review by that deadline, the item will appear on the agenda for July 24th, 2017, with a recommendation to move forward with a nuisance recommendation and its ultimate results as defined in city code.
Sabrina, did you get all that? Do you have that written down, Mr.
right.
Cook?
Yes, I do.
If you could submit that to Sabrina. Do we have a second? Mr. Preister?
Mayor, I will second it, but I would also ask, I'm concerned about the standing water that's there that would continue to be there. I would offer a friendly amendment, or if you would like to, about cleaning up all the debris, the tires, the standing water. I think those pose serious health concerns, especially the breeding ground of that water for mosquitoes, but who knows what else is in that. So, Mr. Cook, if you would, please.
Yes, also, in my motion, the property owner is required to clean up the property to code compliant requirements to eliminate the current property conditions and associated neighborhood complaints by July 19th, 2017.
Mr. Sullivan?
I just make one comment, Mr. Cook, and that is if we would, I think you said submit plans by July 12th, or 19th, I'm sorry, and that they be adequate or something to that effect?
What I put in here that that by no later than July 19th be accompanied by a definitive timetable for implementation of approved work to completion.
Okay, and I think then we will, then at that July 24th meeting, we would decide whether that is an acceptable time frame. Correct? Is that the anticipation? The July 24th meeting?
Yeah, the thought was if nothing's presented by July 19th that works for permits and inspection, there's a plan, it's approved, timetables put involved, everything agreed to, that if that didn't, the thought was if that wasn't completed by July 19th, that it would be back on the agenda July 24th.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to get to, is we could have a plan presented on July 19th that says I'm going to build a building in 2027. And that's what I'm saying,
Okay.
that we also, it would have to be submitted by July 19th, and it would have to be approved by the council on the 24th. Is that
Okay,
okay?
I'll put that in there, that it has to be submitted no later than July 19th, 2017, and approved at the next meeting of July 24th, 2017.
There you go. Yep.
And I don't have all that written down, so you may have to
She was
just-
writing as fast as she could. Yeah. So, Mr. Preister, are you okay with the second?
I am.
And those amendments? Thank you.
And I appreciate Mr. Cook's effort in putting that together.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, comments, discussion? Mr. Modry?
Okay, so the motion asks for a plan to, detailed plans to be compliant with code requirements and issuance of permits. Is there any timeline on that plan for cleaning up some of the debris and that sort of thing? Or is that part of the plan?
That was part of my second
That-
part of it. I had it here to clean up the property in reference to the code
Okay.
requirements of the current condition and what has been complained on
Okay.
by the neighborhood. And I'm also going to submit to Sabrina, our clerk, copies of 5 emails that I received recently in regards to the condition of the property.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for all your time on this. We will try to move ahead and work with you. Take care.
Yeah.
Jeff, get the door.
Wow, that seemed like it was a lot longer than that.
I did that for a few times and found a window.
Mr. Shannon, do you want to be seated so we can move on?
You only were to step out for the one. Do you need to step out for longer than? We'd show the record that, thank you.
Item C is a public hearing on the small subdivision plat for lots 1 through 5, the Links. General location is 40th Street and Platteview Road. The applicant is JDT Properties LLC. Sub-item 1 is approve the waivers of section 6-3 and 6-4 from the subdivision regulations.
My name is Josh Tedder with JDT Properties. I am requesting to develop a small subdivision plot, approximately 40th and Platteview Road. The site is approximately 10 acres. The proposed Lot 1 is currently a single-family residence of approximately 4 acres. The lots 2 through 5 sit on a vacant, approximately 6-acre vacant land. We had to add Lot 1 into this subdivision simply to meet the requirements on lots 2 through 5 for acreage. These lots 2 through 5 will be serviced by well and septic systems, as there is no public sanitary sewer and water services in this rural area. This 6-acre plot is the future land use map of this area shows this being rural estates. The properties to the east and west of this area, this subdivision plot, are acreages to the east and west, and we believe this is the best use of this property.
Thank you. Could you go ahead and sign in if you would, please? And I'll go ahead and open for public hearing on this item. Anyone wishing to speak on this item, or if you have any questions for Mr. Tedder? Are there any questions? Don't see any questions at this time for you, Mr. Tedder. Are there others that would like to speak on this item? See none, I'll close the public hearing. Wishes of the council? Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we have two motions to make here? On the small subdivision and then on the waivers? Okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the small subdivision plat for lots 1 through 5, the Links. General location is 40th and Platteview Road, and the applicant is JDT Properties LLC.
Second.
Second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion we approve the waivers of section 6.3 and 6.4 from the subdivision regulations.
Second.
Second by Mr. Modry. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item 11, resolution none. 12, current business.
Item A is a request for permission to partner with NCEA on the application to the Nebraska Environmental Trust for 2 electric vehicles and 2 charging stations in the amount of approximately $34,436 plus a $500 grant writing fee made payable to NCEA.
Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion that we approve the permission to partner with the NCEA on the application to the Nebraska Environmental Trust for 2 electric vehicles and 2 charging stations in the amount of approximately $34,436 plus a $500 grant writing fee made payable to the NCEA.
Second.
Second by Mr. Preister. Discussion or questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Sabrina, the board is showing Mr. Shannon is voting, but not Mr. Preister. Can you Should I change that?
I did vote.
Well, it's the board,
He's erased it.
Okay,
yeah.
we'll catch it on this next vote here.
Well, it's the board itself that, when the names were put up there, they're put up there incorrectly.
Oh, so you know that Shannon is Preister.
So we'll go with this one.
Okay, item B is
Go
approval
with this.
of the
I got it down here, so it's okay.
low responsive responsible bid from Lundross Constructors, Inc., not to exceed $2,186,000 for 1,500 building renovations, civil scope, addition for relocation of City Hall, and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract. This item was continued from the May 22 City Council meeting.
Mr. Burns.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the low responsive responsible bid from Lund-Ross Constructors, Inc., not to exceed $2,186 for the 1,500 building renovations, civil scope addition for relocation of City Hall, and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
Second, Mr. Preister. Discussion or questions? Mr. Modry.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the items we asked to be provided was minutes or instructions that came out of the pre-bid meeting or conference. We did not receive those. I don't know if those are available for us, or...
Mr. Roberts, could you respond? Thank
Yeah,
you.
when we said that there was meeting minutes, or when I said there was meeting minutes, I did misspoke. I was thinking of another project that we were working on. But Scott Haney from Shimmer Associates is here tonight, that he can answer your questions on what went on during the pre-bid meeting.
Okay. Would you? Yeah, I guess my questions anyhow revolve around what was said in the pre-bid meeting concerning how to respond to the solicitation and how to fill out the sheet, you know, where you add, no change, subtract, and that sort of thing. Could you talk about that a little bit?
You want me to talk about that just specifically, or talk about the pre-bid?
Well,
intent of the pre-bid? I think
you
there's some
can
background
you can as well. Yeah,
that we should probably fill in first,
Yes.
if you
that's fine.
would allow me to do that. Sure. You want me to announce myself, or?
Please.
Just state your name if you would, please.
Yeah, Scott Heaney. I'm a senior architect and project manager with the Shemmer Associates. So we are the architectural design and engineering consultant on the 1,500 building renovation project. So I asked the question because I think it's important to, as a recap of the pre-bid meeting, that meeting doesn't stand alone, exclusive of the bid process. I wanted to make that clear. There's really, several parts to that, and it's a very structured process. So really there's three kind of key parts, just maybe to put on the record, but the bid documents themselves, the drawings and specs that are issued, and then a timeline begins of about 3 weeks. The pre-bid meeting occurred a week later after those drawings were issued out to the public for advertisement, for reaction from contractors, bidders. So the general purpose really of the pre-bid meeting is kind of two things. From my perspective, the way we try to run it. The first thing that it really helps the client do here, in this case is the city, helps kind of qualify the potential bidders. Because in this case, the bid documents required them to attend in person. So we see who's interested, and that helps us gauge what the interest in the project is going to be. Because really that's an indicator of how many people show up, how competitive the bids are going to be, what the reaction is going to be. So in this case, 9 general contractors showed up, which was, in my opinion, a great turnout. And 7 of those 9 actually ended up submitting bids. So that's a very positive thing. Second purpose of the pre-bid meeting is to let the contractors kind of get a physical look at the building, because the plans, don't always paint the full picture. So they get to get generally familiar with the building, kind of tour around, ask any general questions they would like. A lot of times, contractors that show up haven't even picked up the plans yet, so it gives them a, like I said, an idea of what the project scope is. They may choose not to bid it at that point because it's sort of a preliminary meeting. So, kind of having said that, that's kind of to frame the intent of the meeting. So the way the meeting went was I led it, since I'm the project manager from Shemer. I basically did a quick introduction of myself and our client contact, who's Jeff Roberts. Introduced ourselves to the entire group. I think there was probably, I don't know, I'll say 20, 25 people there. We met outside, so basically in a kind of informal gathering out in front of 1500 building. And I gave, like I said, probably a 5-minute introduction. I highlighted probably, at least recalling probably several of the kind of the key pieces of the project. You know, how big it is, kind of general facts. I try to point out things that are usually specific to that project. So 2 of them that jump out on this project are certainly that there's liquidated damages included in the project, to make sure everyone's aware of that, and that they don't miss that, certainly, because that's important. And then the other one was the alternate, we call it, which is asking for a separate price for the network, server room work, a defined scope over in the 1510 building, because it's important to know that it's not in the 1500 building. It's a separate piece of work that needs to be identified and that people should be aware of. So I would say those are kind of the highlights. Certainly the important things that we covered, and then the agenda was basically walk the outside, walk the inside of the building, and then also visited the basement server room over in 1510 to get people visually, you know, oriented, acquainted with the buildings. No, that's a good question. We typically do not issue what you'd call standard meeting minutes, because they would not be part of the official bid documents. Like I said, this is a structured process. It's fairly informal discussion, but if something does come up that's brought to my attention, either in the bid documents, in the drawings or the specs, that may affect cost, time, you know, a process of work, something maybe we left out, I'd record that, and we would issue that in what's officially called an addendum, which is a document defined by the bid documents. There were 3 of them on this project, clarifying things. There were 3, yep. And those pieces of information, that document is issued by our office. It goes to A&D Technical, was the printer and sort of the online plan room for this project. So they're sort of the administrator of that information. So it is a sole source of information going out. I don't send emails to individual people with that type of official bid information. It goes to the plan room, and then they submit it to every plan holder. Doesn't matter who they are. So if there were any, I guess, sorry, this is kind of a long answer, but if there were any significant changes at that point that were uncovered, they would have been in an addendum document. That would have been the official minutes, if you want to call it that. Yeah.
The evaluation process,
Mm-hmm.
Shemer involved in evaluating the bids?
Jim, is your mic on?
For the evaluation process, then, when proposals, bids were received, Shemer involved then with
Yeah.
that evaluation?
I was at the public bid opening.
Okay.
Jeff and I opened the bids physically and read them off and recorded them on the bid tab that I brought with.
Okay. And it was based on bid price, really, right? That was the primary selection factor?
Correct.
Selection factor.
That's one factor, yes. But that's what the bid form requested, was
Okay.
a base bid and then a price for this alternate scope of work at the server room. So there were two prices identified.
Right.
And, I'm sorry, there was also a stipulation for calendar days.
Yes.
So there were three pieces.
Yes. I guess, why didn't we just ask them to give a price for the main work, a price for the alternate, and add those up? Why did we put add, no change, minus, mix into it to confuse things?
There was no mix at that point. The documents clearly identify that it was supposed to be an add. I mean, that's what the document says. So this is
okay.
This is basically hindsight at this point, but at the time that we opened the bids, we were expecting a base price with an add to it. That's the way the documents are written, and that's what was expected.
Yeah.
There were documents that were submitted otherwise, but.
Right. And the one that we're proposing to give the bid to was submitted otherwise.
That's correct.
And there was one other that had a deduct, and then on our tally sheet here, I don't understand how you add alternate work, so you're doing the base work plus the alternate work, and it's less expensive than just doing the base work. That's what the sheet is telling me for the one company that had deduct. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I can't explain how they filled out their bid form. I don't represent them, so.
Okay. I don't know. We may have legal issues.
Well, I don't think, in my opinion, the representative, Mr. Schimmer, from Schimmer has accurately defined that, because in the description, it specifically says if the alternate does not affect the contract sum, the bidder shall indicate no change.
I know it says that there,
So
yes.
sort of to say it was clearly supposed to be an add only, I think is a complete inaccurate of that statement.
Okay.
Any further discussion, questions?
Yeah, I guess.
Mr. Shannon?
Once you completed opening the bids, it was your assessment that who won the bid?
I don't think there was a clear decision at that point, because.
Okay, but at some point, you did come to a decision about who won the bid, right?
Yes.
Okay, and in your opinion, who won the bid?
Well, like I said, it's hindsight now. It's got a little cloudy, but.
At that time?
At that time, Lundross, because they had the low number on the sheet, and we had not physically added them together yet.
Okay, but you sent an email to another company telling them they won the bid?
We were confused at that point, yeah. And it's not, I guess, I'll clarify that for you.
Thank you.
Since you ask, sure. It's not my job, it's not my role to make an official award to anybody. I'm servant of the client. It was more of an informal, sort of a congratulatory email. Should probably not have happened, you're right. I do work with probably every contractor in this community. So it was not necessarily preferential to one contractor or the other. It was at that point, it appeared that they were going to be awarded the job, and congratulations, you know.
Okay, but that was kind of where I was going with this, so I will accept the solve admonishment there, because it is the city of Bellevue's contract to award.
Absolutely. There was no indication that I was awarding the project. I was saying congratulations. It appears that you've been awarded the project.
Okay, but that again leaves us in a clear funk here, because you're the person that wrote the bid spec, you're the person that opened and looked at them, and in your mind, you concluded that another company won.
Yeah, based on basically one piece of information, yeah.
Okay, and you now have corrected that, and your assessment is now different.
Correct.
All right, how did the number of days play into this? Because there's a significant disparity in the number of days. And, you know, if we're looking at a 90-day difference, you know, how was that to be weighed into these bids? I mean, was there an evaluation form approved before this to say that, you know, we're going to weigh this? How?
You're talking about the contract days that were included in the bid
Yes.
form? There was no stipulation for, at least in my mind, there was no stipulation for evaluating those. It was a piece of information that was requested. Again, it's not, I think it's fair to clarify that it's not my evaluation. I was assisting in making the evaluation. And I had no input on whether those calendar days should be or should not be part of the evaluation. I think, in my opinion, they certainly add up to cost, time savings, but that's, you know, not my call. It's not my evaluation. Ultimately, I think, you know, it's the city's responsibility to evaluate all the pieces and select who the actual responsive bidder is based on several criteria, whatever, you know, those are. Cost, time. I don't think just low price is the only
No, but
criteria.
I think if the city's asking for 3 elements in a bid, that there needs to be a clearly defined evaluation process before we send that bid out, so that, you know, it's fair to everybody before those bids are opened, how we're going to evaluate it, how we're going to weigh that information that we receive. So I think the lack of that is part of our problem here.
Mr. Modry.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I was going to ask about. Jeff, was there any established evaluation criteria of how those elements would be evaluated or weighted or looked at?
Really only 2 of the pieces were, and that was for the base bid and the alternate. The number of days was just more of a gauge on their timeline so that we would have some indication on schedule.
Okay.
It didn't weigh into, the low bid could have been the 365 days, and we probably would have taken that one, just because it was the low, because it says the low responsive bidder, not the low bidder with the least amount of calendar days.
Although that low bid
So the low bid
could
was the
overall
primary.
cost us more because of all the extra days.
Right, but the other was just to get a clear look at the schedule, because there were liquidated damages, and we wanted all the contractors to make sure that there are liquidated damages, and if you miss your deadline,
Yeah.
we will deduct $2,000 a day.
Right. Okay, thank you, Jeff.
Any other questions or discussion? We have a motion and a second. Call the vote. Please vote.
Mayor, I was absent. I'd like to hear the motion.
Motion to approve and second.
Fund Ross at the amount that's stated in the,
As per your agenda. It's not open for public hearing. Mr. Sullivan, we have someone from the audience that has a question.
public hearing, when
Sorry.
somebody makes a motion.
I just called the vote for this. Mr. Modry?
Okay, so the price in the motion is $2,186,000, correct? So that didn't change from the base bid. Thank you.
Please vote. Look at that one, I think.
The vote is 4-2. Mr. Shannon and Mr. Modry voted no. Because it's wrong on that side, so.
Is it correct on this? It's correct on this
On
side, though.
this side and
Yes.
on mine, down here.
Thank you. Motion passes. Thank you.
Item C is the approval of the responsive responsible bid from Tab Construction Company not to exceed $261,841.10 for the 2017 concrete project and authorizing the mayor to sign the contract.
Like a motion? We're on item 12C. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion, we approve the low responsible bid from Tab Construction Company not to exceed $261,841.10 for the 2017 concrete project and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
Second.
Second, Mr. Modry. Discussion? Questions? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you.
Item D is the approval of change order number 1 for the Bellevue Swimming Pool renovation project at Gilbert Pool in the amount of $37,194.
Mr. Burns.
I make a motion that we approve the change order number 1 for the Bellevue Swimming Pool renovation project at Gilbert Pool in the amount of $37,194.
Second.
Second by Mr. Hanson. Discussion or questions? Mr. Modry.
Okay. This change order is due to some Nebraska Health Department as well as the Bellevue Codes Department had some things they wanted to have revised or changed. Is that
That's correct. Because of the geometrics of the pool, we had to add more concrete. There's a whole list. I think there's like 34 different items. Plumbing, different things, just because of the change of the geometrics that was required by our permits and inspections.
Did permits inspections and then look at the initial bid did they know about these requirements on the initial bid that was submitted and the specs?
Well, the initial bid, going back to this was a design build.
Yeah.
So what we did is we approved a contractor and designer, and then they started the design process. This went through the DHHS, and everything was approved through them, but through some other different codes in the International Building Code, there was some deficiencies that had to be corrected.
Okay. And then there's, in the letter from Carruthers, a little bit of a concern. They talk about incurring construction delays due to work stoppage caused by code reviews and associated plan revisions. I just want to make sure we're not unnecessarily holding people back.
No, we were able to work around with the material that was on site and still continue with the pool without impeding the timeline of it. So we're still on schedule for what it should be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Discussions? Please vote.
5 yes votes, one no.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Could you mention who that no was?
The no is actually Mr. Shannon.
The same person that hasn't voted yes for anything on this spending spree on the pools, all right?
Item 12E, please.
Item 12E is a request for permission to purchase a vehicle for the Fleet Department using the National Joint Powers Alliance contract and Equipment Technology, LLC, ETI, not to exceed $23,654.
Mr. Burns.
I'll make a motion that we approve permission to purchase a vehicle for the Fleet Department using the National Joint Powers Alliance contract and Equipment Technology, LLC, not to exceed $23,654.
Second by Mr. Preister. Questions or discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Thank you. Item number 13, administration report. Comments must be limited to items on the current report. Are there any questions for Mr. Mangiamelli or his report? Mr. Preister.
Just one, I would ask that by the next meeting that the board could be repaired so it accurately reflects who's voting what.
Duly noted. Thank you. Mr. Shannon? It's the names. Mr. Shannon, do you have a question?
I do. What's the status of the damage to Washington Park?
You talking about The tracks,
Yes.
Brian was here. Jeff?
He was here, I don't know if he's,
Is Brian Madison out there?
He must
Nope.
have left.
Phil is saying no.
We'll get an
I'll
update.
have to get back with you on that one, Mr. Shannon.
Okay. I guess where I was going with this is that this was part of the farmer's market where this event took place and where the
First
damages
day.
took place, all right?
Day.
The first day of the farmer's market. So if we have a person operating a farmer's market for profit, collecting fees at their house for people that are displaying there, then is this person insuring our park? Or are they liable for the damages to our park if they're taking responsibility for it and running an event?
We did meet with the chair of the farmer's market, and she's assured us that this will not happen again.
Okay, but is there recourse for the city? Are we gonna have her insure against damages for the future?
That was discussed when the document was before the city council, and there was no insurance requirement on it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from Mr. Mangiamelli? See none, we'll move on to item number 14, public requests to be heard. Any member of the public addressing the council shall abide by council policy resolution number 35 regarding the principles of conduct and decorum, which states any statement made during the city council meetings by the mayor, members of the city council, city officials, and employees or members of the general public shall not involve personal, impertinent, or slanderous attacks on individuals regardless of whether the individual so attacked is an elected official, a city official, or an employee or member of the general public. And City Code Section 2-68 regarding the manners of addressing the council. Copies of the aforementioned rules are posted outside the council's chambers. Speakers shall limit their presentation to 5 minutes. Is there anyone here who would like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Please come down.
My name is Terry Smith, and I work with Construct Inc. We're a commercial general contractor here in Omaha. And we were one of the 7 bidders that turned in a bid on this project for the 1500 building. And we were told later that day that we were the apparent low bidder via an email from Scott Haney with Shimmer Associates. But I would like to express a little bit concern of how you were looking at that bid tab, because I don't think everyone really understood exactly what I was bidding on and doing. Is that all right if I kind of explain that bid tab a little bit?
You've got 5 minutes, you can say anything that doesn't.
Well, not
get you-
anything, but.
Anything,
doesn't get-
Counselor?
But doesn't get you thrown out by our police chief.
You have
Okay,
5 minutes.
thanks. First off, in the alternate that we provided, and it was an attachment that was provided to the proposal, the alternate, if I can find it here, it actually asks for 2 things. It asks for a breakout number. The breakout number that they're asking for is the cost to perform the work in Building 1510. That number is in the base bid number because that's what it was broken out of. It's not a standalone number by itself. It was a number taken out of the base bid. In the contract documents, you have a set of drawings and you have a project manual. The construction drawings do not show anywhere on any of the drawings at all any notations that this work confined in this area is to be alternate 1 and to be an add or a deduct. It doesn't say that anywhere on the drawings. The drawings show work to be completed in Building 1500 and in 1510 in the UPS room. And on that alternate form, it asks for a breakout number. Breakout of what? When we were at the pre-bid meeting, I had a question that I put out to Mr. Jeff Roberts and to Scott Haney, because I took time and effort before I went to that meeting to really go through the drawings. I was already doing an estimate on it. And I asked, what is this number? What is it? It says a breakout. And he said, that is to be included in the base bid. It's work that's going to be definitely done, but the owner wants to have a number representing the cost of the work because of the way they want to pay for it under whatever areas. But the work is going to be done, and it's going to be done in the base bid. I believe if you were to ask Mr. Haney that Thursday afternoon, 2-3 hours after the bid, he called all 7 general contractors and asked them if their base bid had that alternate one included. And what I was told is that 6 out of the 7 included it in the base bid. I think if you look at Lund Ross's bid, you will see that what is called an ad is actually in his base bid. Just like our number, which is $4,600 less than Lund Ross, is in the base bid. And we gave you a breakout number. And you can see that the breakout numbers pretty much are all the same throughout all the general contractors. It's give or take 2,000 or 3,000, but it's relatively close. So I guess I'm a little concerned on why Construct Inc. is not getting awarded this project as the low responsive bidder. I thought I filled out the form exactly what was asked for. I did not do any modifications to this form because in the past, when I have done any modifications, written anything on one of those proposal forms, it got thrown out. That happened with the city of Omaha on a maintenance facility because something that they specified in the actual contract documents was not even available. It didn't exist. So I wrote down on that form that this did not exist and is not included in our bid. 5 other contractors did the same thing, and we got, all 6 of us got letters within 10 days saying they disqualified our bid. So the X that's marked in the add-in, that was in the document when we got it. And like I said, I've learned a lesson not to modify that document at all. Don't put anything on it except for what's asked for. Here again, the alternate it states right in the alternate, and I'm looking around here seeing if oh, here it is. The alternate says schedule of alternates, that's 1.4. Paragraph A, it says alternate number 1, breakout total price of work for 1510 building service room UPS. And below that, there's 2 lines. One says add, deduct, or no change, and the space next to add had an X in it in the document of the project manual that we got issued. Item number 2 was the price that we had to write in, which we wrote in our alternate number, which is a breakout price. So I don't understand why we're not considered the low responsible bid and being awarded this project. That's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I need to sign in?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Are there others that would like to speak at this time? See none, I'll close the public request to be heard. Item 15, none. 16, adjournment. Mr. Burns.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Mr. Modry. Questions or discussion? See none, please vote.
All voted yes.
Our next meeting will be June 26th. Thank you.